Prabhupada ki jai, Shri Radha Chandra ki jai, Shri Jagannath Shri Baladev Shrimati Subhadra ki jai, Shri Gauri Nitai ki jai, Gaura Premanandi, all glories to some devotees, all glories to some devotees, all glories to some devotees, all glories, Shri Shri Guru Garanga, Shri Prabhupada ki jai. So before I forget, after the second kirtan, second arti, between 7 o'clock?
After the end will be at 7.
Which ends at 7. So after that, so after the feast and after the second arti, we're going to show a 15-minute film. It's kind of special. It's a film about a conference that was held at Harvard University at the Center for the Study of World Religions, commemorating 50 years of the Bhakti tradition coming to the West. And it just released a few weeks ago. And it's a very inspiring film, interviews with some of the original scholars going way back. Some of you may recognize the name Larry Shin, Professor Larry Shin and Tom Hopkins, and then some of our own scholars, Radhika Raman Prabhu and Garuda Prabhu, and we're at this conference. There's a book forthcoming, but right now we have a video there, and it's very inspiring, among other things. The first night of the conference was held in the same room where Srila Prabhupada spoke at Harvard about 40-some years before, 50-some years ago before, around 1968, about 50 years. So anyway, we're going to show that. It's just a short video, but it's worth the stay. If you have a chance to come to stay and hear that, it's quite inspiring. One of the scholars, Tom Hopkins, who's a historian of religion, in his opening remarks, he's talking about how if we look at the contributions of Srila Prabhupada, he said the only one if we look through history, he's a scholar of religious studies. He said, if we look in history, there's only 2 people really we can draw a comparison to with Prabhupada's accomplishments. He says that's Jesus and Muhammad. Pretty amazing. It's not like, Balabhadra Prabhu, disciple of Prabhupada, standing up and saying that Sunday feast class. This is a professor of religious studies at Harvard University making that. And he says, in one sense, I don't want to take away all the fire of the film, but just to give you a sense of how wonderful it is. At one point, he says, actually, if we look at it objectively, Prabhupada's challenge was much greater, because Jesus was in his own country, in his own culture, with disciples his own age. Muhammad had his family and so much support. Prabhupada was one person, 70 years of age, a foreign culture, no support, etc. So it's quite, you'll enjoy it if you get a chance to stay for that. Okay, I was going to read a little bit from Bhagavad Gita, famous verse, 647. Read part of the purport. It's a bit of a long purport. We'll read part of the purport and then discuss for a few minutes. So if you know the verse, you can repeat after me. Yoginam api sarvesham Madhyaten antaratmana Shravan bhajate yomam Samayukta tamo mataha. Lord Krishna says, and of all yogis, the one with great faith, who always abides in me, thinks of me within himself, renders transcendental loving service to me. He is the most intimately united with me in yoga, and is the highest of all. That is my opinion. Purport. The word bhajate is significant here. Bhajate has its root in the word bhaj, which is used when there is need of service. The English word worship cannot be used in the same sense as bhaj. Worship means to adore, or to show respect and honor to the worthy one. But service with love and faith is especially meant for the Supreme Personality of Godhead. The culmination of all kinds of yoga practice lies in bhakti yoga. All other yogas are what means to come to the point of bhakti in bhakti yoga. Yoga actually means bhakti yoga, for all other yogas are progressions towards the destination of bhakti yoga. From the beginning of karma yoga to the end of bhakti yoga is a long way to self-realization. Karma yoga without further results is the beginning of this path. When karma yoga increases in knowledge and renunciation, the stage is called jnana yoga. When jnana yoga increases in meditation on the supersoul by different physical processes, and the mind is on him, it is called Ashtanga yoga. And when one surpasses the Ashtanga yoga and comes to the point of the Supreme Personality of Godhead, Krishna, it is called Bhakti yoga, the culmination. Factually, Bhakti yoga is the ultimate goal, but to analyze Bhakti yoga minutely, one has to understand these other yogis as well. It is by good fortune that one comes to Krishna consciousness on the path of Bhakti yoga to become well situated according to the Vedic direction. The ideal yogi concentrates his attention on Krishna, who is called Shama Sundar, who is as beautifully colored as a cloud, whose lotus-like face is as effulgent as the sun, whose dress is brilliant with jewels, and whose body is flower garlanded. Illuminating all sides is his gorgeous luster, which is called the Brahma Jyoti. He incarnates in different forms such as Rama, Nrsimha, Varaha, and Krishna, the Supreme Personality of Godhead. And he descends like a human being as the son of Mother Yashoda, and he is known as Krishna, Govinda, and Vasudeva. He is the perfect child, husband, friend, and master. And he is full with all opulences and transcendental qualities. If one remains fully conscious of these features of the Lord, he is called the highest yogi. Jai Shri Prabhupada Ki Jai. Om Aganatam Yandasha Anjana Shalakaya Chakshu Umritamina Tasmai Shri Gurvedama Shri Chaitanya Manobishtam Stapitam Yena Bhutale Swayam Rupa Kadamayam Tadati Svapanantikam. Jai Shri Krishna Chaitanya Prabhu Nityananda Shri Advaita Gadadhar Shivasari Gaur Bhaktavrinda. Hare Krishna 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 Hare 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 Rama Ram Ram Hare. So first it's nice to see all the Vaishnavas, Vaishnavis and Vaishnavas back in Philadelphia. I was just in India for about 2.5 months, just came back about 10, 14 days ago. And one of the things that occurred there was the 40th anniversary of the ISKCON Juhu Temple. I don't know if you saw any of that online or anything, the procedure. They were wonderful. They brought 30 or 40 senior devotees. I had never spent much time there except later just visiting, but came and told all these wonderful stories, and we've all heard some of them, of the struggles in trying to establish the temple in Juhu and Prabhupada's great determination. It was very inspiring to attend that. And then further east, they had the installation of the chakras on the top of the Mayapur temple. And that you might have seen some of on Mayapur TV. These chakras are huge. I think the smaller one's about the size of one of these quarter panels. And then the big one was at least a couple stories high. And they brought some artisans from Russia who normally, in Russia they put these beautiful, I don't know what they call them in the Orthodox churches, these big gold kind of tops of their churches. So they brought these Russian workers over and just coated these chakras with gold. And the next day when they're there, they're just effulgent. They're just, when the light starts coming up, you can just see them just catching the sun's rays and sending it everywhere. And one of the devotees even said that some of the Vaishnavas from some of the other mats told him, he said, as soon as those chakras went up, we felt the difference. Even 2 temples down, said, wow, those are powerful, those chakras that you put up there. So that was very nice to see. And then shortly after that, the chief minister of West Bengal, Mamata Banerjee, West Bengal had been a communist state for many, many years, which was a difficulty for us because communists, by their ethics, are not very inclined to support religion. And there were some legal restrictions on us expanding the Mayapur temple. So with the change of government and this new minister, been there for years, but she came and said that the ISKCON Center, Mayapur Center, she said there's some specific term that is important because it allows all kind of support from the local government. world, I think it's called a world tourist site or something like that. And she said she sent a text out. A lot of government people send text out these days, but this was a nice one. And it said that the ISKCON Center should definitely become a world tourist center, which will become famous not only throughout West Bengal, but throughout India and indeed the entire world. So it was nice to be there at that time and hear her support. She was telling Ambarish Prabhu, Alfred Ford, they were standing at the Panchatattva Devis, right where Lord Jagannath is, and they were standing, if you've seen the pictures, you've been there, it's an elevated kind of a stage, the deities are up maybe 6 feet, and then another 5 feet. So they were standing on the kind of the staging area right in front of the deities. So she was asking Ambarish, she said, you should build a factory in West Bengal. And he said something like, I'll do my best. And she wanted a Ford plant in West Bengal. And then they gave her the letter and said, you should help us with our temple. And she said, I'll do my best. So it was a nice little reciprocation. I don't know if Ford Motor Company is ever going to build a plant in West Bengal, but he said, we'll try. So it was nice to see those things. So in this verse we're reading today, Krishna is explaining that of all the different types of yoga, all the different people that practice yoga, different yogis, he said of all these different types, that he says that the highest is the one who practices bhakti, one whose mind is fixed upon me, and who serves me. So today we know yoga is actually very popular. Even I was in China once or twice, and I was amazed how many yoga studios there are in China. And of course, the current government there is not inclined towards religious practice, but yoga was okay. A lot of yoga studios, a lot of people practicing yoga. And that's a good thing that people are practicing yoga. We know there's some practical benefits. Their minds generally become more peaceful, become a little quiet. The main thing they seem to advertise, the body becomes more fit by the practice of yoga. That's a good thing. But according to Bhagavad Gita, according to Lord Krishna, he's explaining here that there's a higher purpose. And generally people don't know that. If you go up to a typical person, you see them walking down the street with their yoga mat, and if you were to just say, excuse me, we're doing a little survey here, what's the purpose of yoga? Or, and they would kind of respond like, the purpose? I can tell you why I go, etc. Or if you were even more specific, you say, what's the ultimate purpose? Most people say, well, there's no ultimate purpose. It's a practice and helps people in different ways. And that's true. It helps people in different ways, and people can apply it according to their particular desires. But at least according to the Bhagavad Gita, according to Krishna, there actually is a higher purpose, which is, it's a means to realize myself, who I am, and ultimately the supreme self. The Vedas speak about the consciousness within the body. We know we're conscious of this body, you're all conscious of your bodies. You stub your toe, you're conscious of it, I may not realize. Somebody steps on your toe, you may not realize, but you realize. You're conscious of what's in your body. So in the same way, it's described as a universal soul that's conscious of the entire existence, and that's Krishna. So the individual soul, through yoga, has the opportunity to, according to Bhagavad Gita, actually come to a realization of who I am. What is my ultimate reality? And is there something beyond being an American or Indian born or Philadelphia born or white or black or male or female? Is there something beyond that? Recently visited some friends who had a relative who was at the last stages of cancer. In fact, I was in India and met with some friends who were bringing the ashes of a devotee, wonderful woman devotee who was serving in Argentina, and cancer appeared in their body, and within just a matter of weeks she passed away, and they brought their ashes and were performing the ceremony and all that. And I was thinking about, as devotees, although death is a difficult thing for all of us, and if we've lost friends or family members, we all have gone through, they could be a very difficult experience. But because we have a sense of the soul as something that gives us some solace, it gives us some hope, it gives us a real sense of peacefulness, knowing that the soul is changing bodies every moment. The body's changing, but the consciousness is there. So at the end of life, as Krishna says in the second chapter throughout the Gita, when the body dies, it's just the soul's passing on to another place. But we were at an event, visited some people who were very not so spiritually focused, at least some members of the family. And you could just get the sense they expected science was going to do everything it could. Get the best doctors, the best hospitals, the best medicine. But ultimately, we all know, at some point in time, the best doctors, the best medicine, the best hospitals, they can't stop what's the inevitable, which is the soul is going to leave the body. And people don't know that. So again, they're thinking yoga is how to make the body more fit, but they're not understanding the potential. It's kind of like if you give a lot of money to a child, you give a child $100 bills, and they sit and play, Monopoly with it or something, without understanding what the potential that has. So the same way, from the eyes of Shastra, people engage in so many activities without understanding the potential. So here Krishna is explaining, of all the different kinds of yoga, bhakti is the way to connect those two souls, the individual soul and the universal soul. Someone was telling me recently the word religion has a similar meaning. Anybody know Latin here? Anybody study Latin? I was told ligio means like ligament. You know that, Kaivaiko? Is that possibly? It's not in the medical books. They don't say ligament comes from ligio. Or anyways, this yoga teacher actually was telling me religion means to or again ligio, connect. So similar to yoga, for the soul to connect, individual soul to connect with the Supreme Soul. So here, Krishna is explaining how that works, and he says in the 6th chapter, and elsewhere he gives more detail, but he says, one who thinks of me, renders service to me, and who abides in him in great faith, they are most intimately connected with yoga. So we see this process of bhakti. It's actually a very, very simple process, and it's one where the Gita explains the means and the ends are the same. You think of Krishna, and in the perfected state, we can always think of Krishna. We render service to Krishna in the perfected phase. We, face-to-face, Prabhu says, we render service to Krishna. And it's easy. Sometimes I remember in my years of spiritual searching, sometimes I'd read about saintly people from different traditions or different types of yoga practice. We hear about it from Prabhu's teachings too. Sometimes certain yoga practices, people go to the Himalayas or other places and sit in ice cold water up to their neck. Or sometimes there were some ascetics in some of the Western traditions, they do things like put bamboo or pine needles and things under their fingernails to try to, separate themselves from the pain of the body and realize I'm something else. And bhakti's like we do things to our bodies too, like we eat halava. Things like that. We take a bath twice a day, or at least once a day. We take a bath and keep ourselves clean. And we eat wonderful food, and we have nice songs, and those are the tapasya's, the austerities that we undergo. So it's a very simple process, and Krishna himself even says in the Gita, if you just offer me with love and devotion a fruit, a flower, a little bit of water, I'll accept it. So Prabhupada explains it means that there's no barriers. You don't have to be rich, you don't have to be famous, like there's certain golf clubs, right? If you're not rich, you can't get into the golf club, and there's probably still a few around. If you're not of a particular ethnic group, you can't get in. And unfortunately, there's even some temples of other lineages in India. If you're not of a certain ethnicity, you can't get in. If you're a white American, you can't get in. If you're a black American, you ought to fake it. You can try. But if you get caught, you won't just be black. You'll be black and blue, because they'll hit you on the way out. So but we don't have that understanding. Our understanding, there's no material conditions. And therefore it's described as the easiest process. Lord Chaitanya particularly came and taught the chanting because his time is so difficult, so it made the process very, very easy. But Prabhupada also mentions the process is easy, but the application is a little difficult. So as those of us that are practicing Bhakti Yoga, it's an important instruction for us that the process is easy, but the application is difficult. The path is easy, but for me to be on the path, it can be difficult. And so why is that? Well, we're, as we use this term, Prabhupada uses the term conditioned You know, we have a lot of bad habits. There's things we've been doing for a long, long time. Krishna says, just think of me. Well, that's easy. But the problem is we're trained to think of other stuff. And even if you don't want to, you just drive down the road, you're bombarded with other things you're supposed to think about. You know, it used to be there were big billboards that sat there with one message for 3 months. But now the message changes every 30 seconds. There's further ways of stimulation. It used to be when I was young, there were 3 or 4 television stations. I grew up in Detroit, and there was one from Canada. So that was your variety. And then they came out with something called UHF. You could get like channel 50 and 56. And there was like 6. And now there's hundreds. There's hundreds. So just all kinds of other ways of stuff to think about other than Krishna. So the process is easy. Just think about Krishna. But the problem is other things pull us away. And Krishna says, just take shelter of me. That's easy to do. But the difficulty is we are pulled to take shelter of other things. You know, the whole culture tells us, take shelter in money, take shelter in some forms of power, take shelter, become famous, and that's a good thing. Again, I was just in this big medical center, take shelter of all the modern medicine and all the new technologies that are there. And of course, they're helpful to a certain extent. No problem with that. Krishna says, serve him. That's kind of an easy thing to do. It's actually easy to render service. Anybody can come to the temple and you can bring some flowers for the deities. We can come and sit and listen to give class or listen to class. We can join in the kirtan. We can eat prasadam. We can, put a little money in the deity box so we can, help finish the temple construction with a bigger check. It's easy to render service to Krishna. The problem is the mind doesn't necessarily want to serve Krishna. But we have to serve something. And that's where the intelligence is meant to come in. Because we have a tendency to think, well, I don't really want to serve Krishna. Prabhupada writes in one purport in the Bhagavatam, he says, our relationship with Krishna as his servant, and he uses this beautiful term, it's the most congenial form of intimacy. It's the most pleasing, most intimate, most heartfelt relationship we can have. And we all have different relationships with friends, or sometimes with spouses, children, parents, like that. Those are different types of intimate relationships. But Prabhupada describes that when we awaken our relationship with Krishna, it's the most congenial form of intimacy. So serving him is easy, but again, we have all these different habits of wanting to serve others. And even if we don't want to serve, we have to acknowledge, and the charts point out this, we're forced to serve. If you don't want to serve, this is March, then just try to see how free we can be from service. Don't send in a check on April 15th. And wait and see what happens. Now we know I live in D.C., there's a lot of talk about they're not funding the IRS the way they used to. There's less guys there to track you down. But there's a good chance that eventually they will if you choose, I don't want to serve. Or if you drive down the street and there's a red light, you say, well, I don't want to obey the red light. Why should I surrender to somebody else? I'll just drive through the red light. Well, then all those nice gentlemen or sometimes ladies in their blue and black cars come and pull us over. And if we say, I don't need to be polite to you. Why do I have to accept your authority? I can do whatever I want to. Well, then they give us a nice warm place to stay overnight. And then they take you and introduce you to a nice man or woman who sits on a big bench, and you're supposed to stand up when you walk in. And if you don't stand up, or if you don't speak to them, if you don't want to serve them, well, then you get to serve what? Time. Right? Then they throw you in jail for a few years, contempt of court and all that. So we can say, I don't want to serve, but we're forced to serve something. And Krishna is saying, if you just serve me, then actually that's the way elsewhere in the Gita says one experiences unlimited joy, unlimited happiness, and the joy of devotion. So it's easy. He's explaining here it's easy. Think of Krishna, serve Krishna, take shelter of Krishna. But we have these habits. We're pulled to other things. We're attracted to other things. I was noticing this morning. I was fortunate enough to lead a little kirtan. I'm not the greatest kirtan leader in the world, but you try, do what you can. But my mind was going so many places. And finally I just said to myself, I just said, I reject these thoughts. I don't want to think about this and think about that. I don't want to like be criticizing this in the back of my mind or worried about it. I want to think about Krishna. So whatever comes and goes, I don't want to listen to you. My dear mind, be quiet, please. I'm just going to listen to the kirtan. And but it's not easy because my habits are to go a million different places. So therefore, our acharyas and Krishna and the Guru, they give us the process of sadhana. We have sadhana, we have the shastras, we have the sadhus, association with spiritual people, to help us stay in this path. Because it's an easy path, but it's easy to get distracted. As Prabhupada said many times, he quoted the English expression, God helps those that helps themselves. So we make the effort. But he also said for every one step we take towards Krishna, he takes 10 steps towards us. So again, Krishna's making it very easy for us, but we have to apply ourselves, and this is the process of sadhana. So my mind may not want to hear the holy name, but understanding that this is the essence of our spiritual practice, and it's good for me and it's good for others. I have to work, as Krishna says, from wherever or whatever the mind wanders, I have to bring it back. And it takes a little bit of an effort. Or I may not want to go to the temple. You know, sometimes I really, really want to go to the temple, and other times I don't want to go to the temple. And I don't know about any of you, probably nobody ever thinks like this, but sometimes in my mind says, well, I'll go to the temple, but only if there's a good chance that he won't be there this week. Or that it maybe if I go early, she won't be there this week, or something like that. The mind is not very pleasant sometimes. Or the mind will say, well, it's time to have the Sunday feast, and there's 7 preparations there. My mind will go, okay, 2 sabjis, pakoras, chutney, puri, halava, nectar, burfi, sandesh. What? No sweet rice?
Oh my God.
Or sweet rice, where's the burfi? Why is there no burfi? Oh, that before I even taste it, oh, that burfi's cooked too much. Look at it, it's too dark. Burfi should be lighter, etc. So the process is easy, just eat prashadam. But the problem is my mind makes so many obstacles. The process is easy, you just associate with devotees. But the problem is my mind, I tend to think, oh, that's a good devotee, that's not a good devotee. I like this devotee, I don't like that devotee. I want to serve with this person, I don't want to serve with that person. These are all the influences of our past habits, materialistic concepts. And therefore, Prabhupada says in the Bhagavad Gita that we should, he doesn't use this term a lot, but he uses it at least once. He says we should apply ourselves to Krishna consciousness as if in a military discipline. Which is, again, he doesn't use that word a lot. It's not that we march into the temple and all that, but he makes the point that we have to be determined. And elsewhere he says that if we do so, that success is guaranteed. Because it is a fact. Sometimes we have a tendency, well, it's just a fact. Again, I think we all go through this. Sometimes there's a sense of, how am I ever possibly going to actually awaken love for Krishna? I'm so far away. And I have so many faults and so many impediments. But Krishna guarantees, he says success is guaranteed for the one who's a rigid practitioner. Not rigid in the sense that sometimes we don't have some difficulties. Rigid in the sense we don't give it up. And in that 6th chapter of Bhagavad Gita, Prabhupada tells a wonderful story we've all heard, but it's a great thing to remember again and again, of the bird whose eggs were laid on the side of the ocean, and the ocean came and swept away all the eggs. And the bird told the ocean, if you don't get my eggs back, I'm going to dry you up.
Oh my goodness.
And Prabhupada says the ocean laughed at her foolishness. But the little sparrow started trying to pick out the water from the ocean. Impossible task. But Garuda heard about it. Krishna's bird carrier, the carrier of the Lord, manifested as this transcendental bird-like form. And he came and said to the ocean, you don't give her eggs back, you got to mess with me. So the eggs came back. So Prabhupada gives this example how Krishna will help us. And this military discipline is not an artificial thing, because as we go on in Krishna consciousness, it actually becomes really pleasant and pleasurable. Not every day, not every moment, not every conversation. But in general, described again in the Gita, param drisva nivartate, there's a higher taste, and we can awaken that higher taste. The problem is when I'm experiencing the higher taste, or when I'm starting to connect with Krishna, my mind pulls me way over there. And then it pulls me way over there. And I need to bring it back. That's the process of bhakti. That's the process of yoga. And when we do that, gradually, more and more and more, and Prabhupada used the term gradually a lot, he used the term gradually, that by the gradual process of Krishna consciousness, all these things are awakened in our hearts. But again, sometimes we think, well, but I don't feel like it. And there's a story, I think I quoted this on Friday night. I heard a lecture in the early years. Devotees were just starting to pay their obeisances. They were just starting to get a sense you should bow down when you went to the temple and bow down in front of the Guru. And one of the devotees, senior person in those days, had been around for about 2.5 months, senior person, said, Swamiji, I don't feel like bowing down. Like sometimes I don't feel like going to the temple. I don't feel like chanting Hare Krishna. I don't feel like reading the Bhagavad Gita. I don't feel like, when they say, can anybody help go in the kitchen and clean up after the Sunday feast? Like, I don't feel like it. Can anybody, whatever, we need to raise another X number of dollars for the temple. I don't feel like it. Can anybody give somebody a ride home because their car broke down? I don't feel like it. So we all have that because of these habits. But Prabhupada told this devotee when he said, I don't feel like bowing down, Prabhupada said, that's okay. Just bow down and the feeling will come. Just bow down and the feeling will come. So we may not feel like being enthusiastic, right? It's described in the Upanishad, one should engage in devotional service with enthusiasm. We may not feel enthusiastic, but if we try, the enthusiasm comes. And we may not feel particularly, humble, but if we try to be humble, humility comes, etc. We may not feel like chanting. All these things, Prabhupada said, it's guaranteed it'll come. We have to apply ourselves to it. And then there's one other part that is important that sometimes can kind of be an impediment. I'll just mention, because it is so easy. Krishna says you're intimately connected with me. Prabhupada says success is guaranteed. It's a gradual process. It's our natural birthright. It's described many, many places. But there's one little tricky part that we understand as we study the scripture more. And even at the time of initiation, Prabhupada's line, you have to get a lecture on this part. It's so important if you think about it. I mean, we don't have scripted lectures. You go to certain, perhaps maybe the Episcopal Church, every Sunday, every Episcopal Church, they speak on a certain thing. They all get it's a topic for the week. I think Catholic churches are like that, some different traditions. We don't have that. Philly, we're reading Bhagavad Gita. Maybe Washington, D.C., they're reading Bhagavatam this week, whatever. But one thing we do have that everybody hears when a person decides to take vows is a lecture about the 10 offenses. It's interesting that Prabhupada made that part of that process. Because if we're not careful, the offenses that we can commit in our devotional service is described sometimes like it's pouring water on a fire. So we're trying to light this fire of Krishna consciousness, bring light into our heart. But if we're not careful, we can commit offenses. And there's 10 offenses, and not time to get into all 10. We'll mention, it's worthwhile thinking a little bit about the first offense, reminding ourselves. It's described that to blaspheme the devotees who dedicated their lives to propagation of the holy names of the Lord. Not only is it the first one on the list, it's described in other ways too. What's the other way it's described? It's called the mad elephant offense. Imagine a mad elephant. When I was in Mayapur, they have 2 elephants and they get bigger every year. And they're pretty big. And when you see the elephants coming down, they kind of, they walk like this. And when you see the elephant walking down the road, they don't necessarily stop for you. They don't stop on a dime. It's like you see the elephants coming, you get off the road. And if the road's narrow, you climb into the ditch. And you don't stand there thinking like, hey, wait a minute, what are you doing? I got to right away. I was here first. I'm a senior devotee. I'm a human being. You're an animal. Move over. You don't think like this. It's like the elephant's coming, get out of the way. What to speak of if it was a mad elephant? It's get out of the way, climb the tree, run away, hide, whatever you got to do, get away from that mad elephant. So this describes the mad elephant in our devotional service. Is if we blaspheme, and it's kind of a complex word, but we can understand in general this means if we're unnecessarily, if we're critical, if we're harsh in our dealings, if we offend someone, if we minimize a devotee, and it's the mad elephant. It can crush our devotional service. And we've seen sometimes when devotees get in those mentalities, and sometimes they kind of take themselves out of the Sangha. Sometimes you see they kind of develop a certain mentality, and they take themselves out of the association devotee because they become kind of too filled with a critical mentality. Now at the same time, it doesn't mean that as thoughtful persons, we shouldn't be aware of where there's things that could be improved or something, there's some kind of shortcomings or so to be able to critique things is one thing, but to be critical is another. Critique would be, as an example, the kitchen's not clean. What could I do to help it be cleaner? As opposed to the kitchen's not clean. Those people are not Krishna conscious, they're pretty lazy. Why don't they do something about it? They's kind of a materialistic word in that sense. They should do something about it. Or sometimes even worse, you. What do you do? Or sometimes they say a kind of little play on the word, forgive me. Sometimes devotees like to should on each other. You should do this, you should do this, you should do that. So we're shoulding on each other. What we should be doing is trying to serve each other. And with a critique, with our mind as a critique, understanding that this temple belongs to Lord Jagannath and Radha Shadavihari. Just like I've been a few months, it's nice to see the improvements. The new building's almost done. It's just going to be a few months. We're talking about, possibly having an opening sometime May, June. The temple's been painted inside and the outside, so many things. It's nice improvements. So those are very, very good things, and they should give us an enthusiasm and optimism. And at the same time, it doesn't mean that we don't also, as thinking human beings, see where there's some room for improvement. But then we should think, well, who can improve things? I can sit around and wait for Balabhadra to do it. Maybe he will, maybe he won't. Or I can do something, And I have two choices. I can talk about it and tell everybody else what I think is wrong. Or I can say, why don't I help to be part of the solution? Now, if we look to our founder Acharya means he's the one that started the modern manifestation, the global manifestation of Lord Chaitanya's movement. He was the founder and he's also the Acharya, so he taught us by example. So when he was, his whole life, inspired to try to share Lord Chaitanya's movement, and he didn't get a whole lot of help. But what would have happened if Prabhupada had just said, well, let somebody else do it? Where would we all be? A lot of the Western people of Western birth, we'd probably just be floating around out there, maybe taking a yoga class. Maybe we just fall into gross materialistic activities.
Okay.
A lot of the people from, Indian background, I think Prabhu gave a nice class last week kind of clarifying the point too. There's so many different devas and who's who, what's who's supposed to, where's it all come from, just kind of confused and worship everybody. Like they say, cover all the bases. Some of us might have become atheists or whatever. But because Prabhupada took that proactivity, because he made the effort, we've been so benefited. So this mad elephant offense is something we should be careful about. And part of the problem is we all make mistakes. So many mistakes. So we deserve to be, in one sense, that I wouldn't say deserve. There's lots of raw material. Anybody wants to give a list of criticisms about me, you probably come up with 100 off the top of your head. Come to me afterwards, I'll give you another 300 or 400. There's a long list. It may not be the most profitable way to spend your time, but there's a long list. We all make mistakes, we all have shortcomings, and therefore we see those things, and the tendency is sometimes to become a little critical with that. So Lord Chaitanya gave us the secret how to overcome that. Anybody know what Lord Chaitanya's secret was how to overcome that critical nature that comes up in our minds? Certainly the holy name.
Katti Anuttama.
By chanting, our hearts can become purified. And what was the secret to success of that chanting? A little louder. Everyone can say, Tarara Pisari, Amani, Amani, Kirti. He said that one should chant the holy name in a humble state of mind, thinking oneself lower than the straw in the street. One should be prepared to give all respect to others and not expect any respect in return. And Prabhupada, I think it was Chaitanya Charita, there was someone who said, with Prabhupada Percy said you should put that on your neck, wear it on your neck. Krishnadas Kaviraj said you should take that verse and put it and keep it around your neck. How important it is. So, we're devotees, we want to become Krishna conscious. The process is Sankirtan, coming together and chanting. And the only difficulty with coming together and chanting part's not easy, coming together is tough. And harder than coming together is staying together. But Prabhupada also gave a very important instruction on how do we stay together. So if we're humble, we can avoid that offense, that offensive mentality. If we're humble, we can avoid slipping from an objective mentality, which may see some room for improvement. Of course, first and foremost, I should see what I need to do better. And avoiding critical, where we're just allowing ourselves to become unnecessarily critical of others. But Prabhupada also gave a very, very important formula about how we can work together cooperatively. He told described as the ultimate managing authority, the GBC, that they should come to Mayapur every year, and he gave them one topic to discuss. Anybody know what that topic is? You don't know that?
Unity?
Unity in diversity. He says you come together every year and discuss unity and diversity. Of course, there's so many other things to discuss: deity worship, book distribution, temple, devotee care, so many things. But specifically said every year you should come and discuss unity and diversity. Now, why did the founder Charya, the Hare Krishna movement, tell his international leaders that's the one thing you should come together and discuss? Because you can understand that's the one that you're going to really need to discuss. Because that's going to be a problem. Because you can't have an international movement that's going to go from every town and village, and we see it's manifesting. So we've got people from every ethnic background, every national background, every religious background, every cultural background, these days every age. We didn't used to have grandmothers, we got a lot of grandmothers now. Yeah. Grandmothers are lovely. They also can be opinionated once in a while. Young people are lovely. They also can be a little overconfident once in a while. So that's the diversity. It enriches us. We need that. And Prabhupada wanted us to come together and discuss unity and diversity. So if we can cultivate this sense of humility, understanding that I'm very small, Krishna's very great, I depend upon the devotees. Sometimes I try to remember if I'm having difficulty with anybody, I stop and think, okay. You know, Lord Chaitanya taught us the most valuable thing is association devotees, and the most horrible thing would be not have association devotees. So sometimes if I'm having trouble with a particular person, I stop and ask myself, okay, if there were no Vaishnavas, if someone tomorrow woke up and the world was just full of materialistic people who think there's nothing to do but go to work, make money, buy the latest thing that's on the 6 o'clock, ads at the 6 o'clock news. Nobody, nowhere. And you looked and looked and looked and looked. You couldn't find anybody who was spiritually inclined. And then you found the one person who I may have a little difficulty getting along with. How excited and feeling blessed would I be to be with this person? And if they did whatever they do that drives me crazy, they would instead drive me into ecstasy that I get to be with this person. Because it's such a valuable opportunity associated with devotees. And I know Bhakti Tirtha Maharaj, he used to talk a lot about we should think about that the devotees we're associating with, they may be the people that are with us in our last few days or hours or minutes. We know in our tradition, being able to help us through that painful time, remembering Krishna, not thinking of all our different attachments, but really focusing our mind on the soul, and not worried about who's going to take care of my dog when I die and things. Those people are critically important to us. And he said we should think these may be the people who are going to be with us, who are going to help us at that most important time. And certainly devotees help us even through the ordinary times of our lives. So we should try and remember that. And as Prabhupada told us, and we know sometimes Prabhupada can be very blunt, right? Guru is sometimes heavy, sadhu one who cuts. He said there's two kinds of mentality. Of course there's nuances, but to help us clarify, he said there's two types of mentality. One is a bee, right? Of course bees sometimes sting, but on the other side, the bees, what are they looking for? We see them in the spring, they'll all be out soon. They're going from flower to flower to flower, looking for the nectar to make honey.
Honey, whoa.
Isn't it? The bee's always looking for the positive things. So he said that's one kind of mentality. The other mentality describes another flying creature. What's that one? The fly. They're also coming soon. As soon as the snow melts, all the flies come out. Do the flies go to the flowers? Do they go to the honey? Where do the flies go to? If you were out gardening, you cut yourself with a little blood, a little something not so pleasant, zoop, right? You flush them away. Go find some flowers. Zoop. Comes right back to the open sore. No mercy. No mercy. It's a fly-like mentality. So Prabhupada told us we have to avoid the fly-like mentality and be like the honeybee who's looking for the nectar. So just to summarize, and maybe just a couple minutes for a question too. Krishna explains in the Gita, Prabhupada expands in his purport, there's many, many different forms of yoga. But according to the Bhagavad Gita, this great, great wisdom tradition passed down in the Sanskrit language for a millennium. According to the Gita, bhakti is the highest. It's not my opinion, it's not Prabhupada's opinion, it's the Bhagavad Gita's opinion. Doesn't mean other yogas are not wonderful and helpful in so many ways, but ultimately, yoga means to understand Krishna and come to a platform of bhakti. Second point, to be successful, we have to apply ourselves. The sadhana is there, the shastra is there, the chanting is there, but we can't just be in a comfort zone. We have to apply ourselves. Krishna will help, he reciprocates with us, but he reciprocates according to what we do. Man proposes, God disposes. He reciprocates with us according to what we do. So we have to be proactive in our Krishna consciousness. We have to take some initiative. And the third point, we should be very careful to avoid offenses. And it's difficult to do because it's our tendency, it's our habit to be critical and to be unnecessarily harsh with people sometimes. We all have so many faults. Sometimes Prabhu would say, if you go to the hospital, there's so many people there that have different illnesses. But don't criticize them because they're in the hospital. They're trying to get better. So everybody that's coming and taking shelter of the International Society for Krishna Consciousness, sometimes we may be casual visitors, we're just doing so many things, and that's wonderful. We love casual visitors. Once we get a little bit past the casual visitor stage, we start realizing, hey, I need to work on myself. This is part of what life is about. It's not just making money, getting a better job. It's about working on myself, becoming a better person, becoming spiritually awake. Once we start doing that, we realize there's a lot of work. So the same way I'm hoping Krishna's a little kind and maybe forgive some of my shortcomings, so I need to develop the same mentality towards others. And if we do that, if we avoid these offenses, then and if we realize how Vaishnavas are so wonderful, that maybe some shortcomings, some flaw, we all make mistakes. But like a loving parent, we should learn to see the mistakes of other devotees as just shortcomings. Prabhupada also says, like some people, they criticize the spots on the moon. Like, wow, look at the moon. It's got spots. Like, huh? Look at the moon tonight. Isn't it beautiful? The spots. What kind of person thinks like that? So in a similar way, we should try not to see the spots, but to see the blessings that Krishna's given us, see the blessings and associate with devotees. And collectively, if there's some shortcomings, this or that, we don't sweep things under the rug, we don't want to do that. But collectively, in a humble frame of mind, we try to take the initiative to see what I can do to correct any shortcomings that might be there. And if we do that, we get Krishna's blessings. And as Prabhupada says, one of my favorite quotes, he says, we enjoy life with a thrill at every moment. That's my aspiration. I want to enjoy life with a thrill at every moment. Get on the bus and you see Krishna. Wake up in the morning, it's raining, and you see Krishna. Slip on the ice and you have to get your ankle twisted, and you see Krishna. Somebody gives you money, you see Krishna. Somebody takes it away, you see Krishna. Somebody tells you you're wonderful, you see Krishna. Somebody tells you you're a jerk, and you see Krishna. Okay, any questions or comments? We have what? My watch says 5:25. 3-4 minutes. Any comments or questions? Yes, just to get up for
In the verse that Krishna says, Mad Vinti Antaratmana, means you're seeing, always thinking of me within.
Hmm.
And here in the temple, we have the deities and we're seeing the deities outside. So could you comment a little bit on that?
Yeah, so his question in here, it said, in the verse Krishna talks about you should see him within ourselves, but here in the temple we see Krishna outside in the deity form. The deity form is one of the supreme vehicles of grace or mercy that Krishna provides us, which is for a very, very advanced yogi, they can see God in the heart. We've got a long, long, long ways to go. So Krishna kindly appears in the form of the deity, which the acharyas describe. The deity is not wood or stone or metal. Krishna fully, personally manifests in the form of the deity. And there's so many histories of deities walking off the altar in response to the prayers of devotees. You know, walking halfway across India and speaking to them, and devotees saying, well, you know, but anyway, not time to tell the stories. There's so many examples of that. And some of us may have experience sometimes when we really take shelter and pray to the deities, we feel their reciprocation, we feel their protection. So coming to the temple, visiting the temple, seeing the deities, offering service to the deities, praying to the deities, this is one of the special aspects of bhakti that's especially important. And we shouldn't prematurely think, you know, I'm so advanced, I see Krishna everywhere, I don't have to see it in the temple. Prabhupada said sometimes people say like that, I don't need to see Krishna in the temple, he's everywhere. Prabhupada said, well, if he's everywhere, he's also in the temple, so come to the temple. Yes, Brahmana.
A little bit further on Vishnu, Vishnu's talking about deities. Can you expand a little bit on Prabhupada and being on the Vyasa-san and the reference we should be showing to him?
Yeah, well, as time goes by, I think in our movement we're understanding more and more of Prabhupada's preeminent position. We know he's the founder Acharya. We know that when he was personally present, he really tried to impact upon the devotees this idea of what it means to be the founder Acharya. He wanted that term on all the books, he wanted that term on the buildings and on the signage, because many different reasons, but one very important one is to understand his preeminent position as the one. He's the preeminent, he's our founder Acharya, the preeminent Siksha Guru. He's the instructing Guru for all members of ISKCON. If we choose at a certain point, we may take initiation from, you know, different gurus. There's going to be gurus now, and 100 years from now, and 500 years from now, and 1,000 years from now. But Prabhupada's business is never going to change. He's always going to be our founder Acharya. We're always going to study his books. We're going to hear his kirtans. We're going to follow the process of bhakti, devotional Vaishnava services that he gave us. He didn't make anything up, but he brought it. He's the empowered messenger who brought this tradition all around the world and made it applicable. So every one of us, we should be very aware of that. Even like initiated devotees, when one takes initiation and you have pranam prayers, you say to your spiritual master, and every devotee in ISKCON is supposed to also say Prabhupada's prayers, at least the first 2 lines. And if we come, for those that haven't been initiated, or would like to say, what's the next step of showing veneration and appreciation of Prabhupada's contributions, it's nice to learn those prayers. It's nice, as I mentioned, even to come and bow down when we enter the temple and show our devotion like that. And to study Prabhupada's books, listen to Prabhupada's lectures. Because he's the transcendental glue that holds us all together. I was just even mentioning devotees today. I'm not sure who programmed the music that's on here. But a lot of temples, they only play Prabhupada in the kirtans. Because there may be like a really wonderful Swami who inspires some of us, but he's not my guru. Or somebody else gets inspired by somebody else, but we all have that connection to Prabhupada. So as much as possible. Now in our homes, it's a different thing. Just like here on the altar, you know, we have guidelines given to us to help us keep Prabhupada in the center. If I'm a Pacharya of a certain spiritual master, if I'm initiated by some spiritual, I bring his picture on the altar and then I take it off. But Prabhupada's picture is always there. Because he's there for everybody. He's there for all. Initiated, not initiated, disciples of this one, that one, whatever, it doesn't matter. 100 years from now, his picture will always be there. But the individual initiating spiritual master, we bring with me, and I take home. In my house, Big picture, no problem. But communally, collectively, Prabhupada's the center. And that's why he's seated in every temple. He's there in the asana. And by the way, beautiful Vyasa that's there now. It's a wonderful improvement. Thank you for all the devotees that arranged that. So,
I like the way you said diversity, unity in diversity.
yeah, Prabhupada said.
I like that, and also I like the word cooperation.
Yeah, very important.
You have to forget about everything, what's happening, why are we here, and do the best we can.
One final quick story. Prabhupada quoted Aesop's fables, where the father presented a bundle of sticks to his children and said, "Can you break these?" And they were not able to break it. And then he said, "I'll show you how." And he pulled one stick out and he broke it. And he pulled another stick out and he broke it. And another one out and he broke it. So Prabhupada also gave that example for us. We need to stay together as a bundle. We need each other. And we have so many shortcomings. I mean, I offend so many people. I disturb so many people, but they tolerate me. We should think like that, Krishna tolerates me. I can't tolerate some of his devotees. With all that I know, all the nasty things in my heart, everything in my past, what to speak of previous lives. But Krishna lets me come here. He lets me chant. He facilitates me. I can't tolerate another person. So how's Krishna going to show me his mercy? Okay, thank you all very much. Srila Prabhupada ki jai.